Hello and welcome to my storybook cottage, and thank you so much for joining me. Today I'm going to be talking about my most recent novel, Traced, which was published last year. Traced is a thriller, and as a summary I'd probably just read the back blurb, which is: Jane is a contact tracer. She has to call a lot of people and some of them don't want to talk. Various reasons: tax, immigration issues, infidelity, domestic abuse. Jane knows all about that. She and her daughter Tara have spent years in hiding from Tara's manipulative and terrifying ex. Now, as Jane talks to a close contact, she realizes the woman on the phone is scared of the same man, and he's close, too close. Suddenly the past comes slamming back into the present as Jane realizes she and Tara can't keep running forever. One day they're going to be found. So Traced is a thriller, and it's set during the early stages of the COVID pandemic, so trigger warning about that. It's also got a bit of domestic abuse involved, coercive control, so trigger warning about that. Some of the scenes are set in Sydney, mostly on the northern beaches or the North Shore. Some of the scenes are set up the North Coast in a place called Crescent Head, but most of the scenes are set around here in the Blue Mountains. And I thought I would take you on a tour of the places I set this book in so that you can see why I chose them. My protagonist, Jane, actually lives in Katoomba to the north of the highway, in the area that doesn't have Echo Point or the main shopping centre. North Katoomba has traditionally been the poor relation to South Katoomba, but it really does have a lot to offer. It has the council chambers, and the Katoomba Neighbourhood Centre, and the Community Legal Centre, and the Masonic Hall, and the Old Mayor's House, and the Katoomba Tennis Courts, and a little public school, and a Girl Guides Hall, and the Men's Shed. And it's also where you'll find the Katoomba Showground, which doubles as a sporting field. Plus, Katoomba Hospital is near the showground, a surprisingly pretty little hospital with its own helipad and some very nice gardens, and a children's playground. There's even an Anzac Memorial Garden tucked away near the hospital. Until quite recently, the area had a rural character, and some of the old farmhouses are still around. As well as the odd paddock. At the very top of North Katoomba, the streets become dirt and run off into the bush. And there's a quirky side to the place as well. With verge gardens and vegetable gardens and dream houses. There are a lot of really cute and beautiful houses in North Katoomba. This is how I describe Jane's house in Traced. I parked on a strip of roadside dirt that was one of the many reasons for my modest rent. I lived on the low side of the street, up against the cliff face that dropped away from the eastern verge, and the only way into my place was a flight of stairs hacked out of crumbling rock. There was no driveway, no garage. God knows how the place was built back in 1915. Every plank must have been brought in on some poor sod's shoulder. It was hard to film this house, but it's old and at the bottom of a hill, and I think it's probably something like Jane's house. There's another scene later on which I imagine to be set in Dora Street, North Katoomba, and it goes like this. "Do you want to come with me?" asked Eric. We were sitting in his car, which was parked near a little brick house on a quiet North Katoomba street. The house looked like a goodbye. It had a big yard, it wasn't far from the shops. Someone had given it a new coat of paint. So that's where Jane lives in the book, North Katoomba. But she also spends a night with a lovely woman called Mary who lives in Blackheath up the highway and opens up her garden studio to women fleeing from abuse. And the description of Mary's house is as follows. Mary Sheehan's house stood in a heritage garden on the eastern side near the golf course. She appeared on the front veranda when I pulled into her driveway, which was lined with elms and maples. Old money, I thought, scanning the sprawling weatherboard homestead. It was all fretwork and French doors, chimneys, stained glass, cast iron garden furniture. There are a lot of big old houses like Mary's in Blackheath. Roslyn is one of them. Then there's Yabba Yabba, a guest house that's very much like Mary's place. Which has the biggest old garage I've ever seen. And there's Rowan Bray, another historic guest house. This big old house is on a huge block of land. As are these ones. This is how I describe Mary's garden. The mist slowly lifted, leaving diamond droplets on the webs strung across every path. Leaves turned from silver to gold as the sun rose. Currawongs gave way to wattlebirds, and wattlebirds to chittering flocks of silver eyes. While she's staying at Mary's, Jane visits Blackheath Post Office in this arcade. Then she buys pasta, cheese, salad, bread and sauce at the local supermarket, which is just across the road. Blackheath has a lovely shopping centre with lots of local businesses. The Victory Theatre Antique Centre, a fantastic place to visit, has a giant mural painted on its side, designed by well-known artist and fashion designer Jenny Key, who's a long-time Blackheath resident. The climax of Traced takes place on the very edge of the Blue Mountains in Lithgow. Jane goes to stay with her daughter Tara in Tara's new house on State Mine Gully Road. Now, there are no houses in the area where I imagine Tara's house to be, but I thought I'd show you the landscape, which has a very secret and enfolding quality in keeping with the tense and scary things that happen at the end of the book. This is how I describe Tara's house. For Tara, The new home's luxurious bathrooms and enormous light-filled interiors easily outweighed the fact that she was perched on the side of a hill several kilometres down State Mine Gully Road. The northern fringes of Lithgow spilled into a series of narrow, lightless, heavily forested gullies, barely wide enough for a creek bed. Some had dirt tracks wriggling through them, and Tara's house was off one of these tracks. To reach her, I had to wend my way along the edge of town, through a warren of little streets lined with tiny old houses, some neat as a pin and some barely standing up, all peeling paint and drooping gutters. The last street light was just beyond the old state mine itself, which was a sprawling collection of railway yards, tin sheds and brick factory buildings. Then came a few more houses, followed by a long, bumpy drive between looming walls of rock and bush. The potholes made it a nightmare in the dark, as did the absence of landmarks. This is approximately the area where I thought Tara could be living. And a lot of action takes place on the top of that ridge up there. That's pretty much it for the Blue Mountains locations in Traced, which I'm hoping you might read now that you've walked around in Jane's shoes for a while. Anyway, thank you for watching this episode, and until next time, happy reading!